on these networks over the weekend. C-SPAN 2 will be at Book Expo America 2000 up there at the Jacob Javits Center in New York City. These are the kind of folks you're going to be able to see live on the network at 8:10 tomorrow morning East Coast time. Queen Nora, Reynolds Price, Stephen Carter at 12 noon around there. Pete Hamill, Rune Arledge, who has a new book coming out, the architect of ABC News in the last 25 years, and his book's coming out in November. Christopher Reeve. Our in-depth on Sunday is Bell Hooks at 12 noon for 3 hours. Sarah Brady, our book notes on Sunday night. William Faulkner, our featured American writer, on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock from his home Roanoke in Oxford, Mississippi, also home of John Grisham and the Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, based there in Oxford, not too far from Memphis. And also we'll have a repeat of the John Steinbeck show tonight at 8 o'clock on C-SPAN 1. That's East Coast time. Here he is without hat. Why no hat?
Well, Wes Pruden has stolen my hat. Have you seen his
yes,
his byline and look at what he's got. I'm going to the dinner with him tomorrow night, but he has stolen the Matt Drudge hat, so I've got to go get it from him.
How about just one of those little golf things there, you know, the little,
yeah,
why
maybe.
don't you try that?
Maybe, now that I live in Miami Beach.
Now, here you are on the morning show. I want to tell the audience this, and this is your day on American cable television. You have Crossfire tonight.
Mm-hmm.
What segment are you on?
I don't know. It's such a confusing show now. They've got an hour, and I don't know how many segments they do. I know it's live from the university, and I'm looking forward to it. Of course, unfortunately, they're not giving me access to James Carville. I've got to go up against Paul Begala. I was really looking forward to a James Carville showdown. That will have to be deferred.
And then Sean Hannity and Alan Colmes at 9 o'clock. What time are you on there?
Probably at 9, or maybe they'll hold me towards the end. Yes, my old stomping ground Fox News channel. When I had my show on Fox News, they weren't #1. They were barely #2, but look how times have changed.
How did we all get suckered into having you on today?
It's the first time I've been in D.C. in about a year. I don't know. You have to ask your booker.
We're first here, so anything you're going to say there must be said here
first. And I have some
first.
things to say.
Go.
Well, where to start? You're talking about the book convention. Did you see the New York Post? Keith J. Kelly, Giuliani is unveiling his book, Leadership. This is before we have congressional hearings on what exactly happened on September 11th, which I think we need to have sooner than later. We're now getting the books from the players. They've turned this one around fast. Tina Brown has turned this. He just turned the manuscript in 2 weeks ago, and now it's going to hit the shelf within the month. So they can really move these things around. 400,000 copies slated to hit the shelves. The story here, Keith J. is saying that he's a hit among the publishers who are usually pretty snobby.
What else do you have to say?
Well, you want to move right in on it? Hal Raines at the New York Times is starting to irk me, to put it mildly. He now is predicting global talks for Mideast. How can this even be remotely possible if anybody saw what Arafat said yesterday? Blasting Israelis, blasting Jews. A great photo on the cover of Newsday, which is an AP photo. Ladies and gentlemen, does this look like peace is right around the corner?
Now, you know, all the newspapers this morning have the story, and they all cover it, you know, as the lead, and they say it's going to be a conference probably in the summer, probably in Europe, probably of foreign ministers, not of leaders of the countries, and you still think it's a bad idea?
I refer you again to that photo. Does this look like peace is around the corner? If anything, what we're seeing there is a strain we haven't seen in our lifetimes, or at least it feels that way, speaking as a Gen Xer who hasn't lived that long.
December 17th, 2000, Bill Clinton TV show pitched, post-presidency plans take shape. This is from the Drudge Report, and you say here, world exclusive.
2 years ago it was. Not this morning it isn't.
Is the world ready for the Bill Clinton show? When he leaves the White House next month, one of Bill Clinton's career options will be the launch of a weekly TV show, the Drudge Report has learned.
Well, and now you see, let's look at the cover of the New York Post.
So here it is.
Let's look at the front page of the USA Today.
There it is.
On and on it goes. This is a fraud of a story, Brian Lamb. Bill Clinton is not doing it. There it is. Bill Clinton is not doing a TV show. However, That still hasn't stopped everyone here in Washington from talking about it. I got my lead today that President Bush, apparently, according to my informants last night, was saying, I'd watch the show. Heck, I'd maybe I even go on the show, probably as a mock. Because the notion that our president now would be meeting with Jeff Zucker of NBC, our former president, and Andy Lack, president of NBC News, to hash out some type of Oprah deal, that's not what's happening here. Last week I sat next to a former Clinton cabinet official on a plane for 4 hours. Dwell time. It's a great time to actually pick people's brains if you sit next to somebody good. They say Bill Clinton is exhausted giving these speeches. Exhausted, tired. Maybe Harry Thomason and his friend David Geffen out in the coast are looking for ways to ease up and give him a cushy TV deal, you know, a limousine to the studio and all the Evian water you can drink. But TV is tough. I had a TV show for a little over a year, just once a week. And I understand the discussions, albeit informal, with Zucker and Lack were about a once-a-week TV show, or a series of shows like David Frost and Nixon, Conversations. This whole notion that he's the new Oprah and he's going to be on every day and $50 million. The New York Daily News has a great thing about where did this $50 million even get started? It says, the source described as just plain wrong a report that NBC was ready to hand over $50 million. So is this a Clinton associate who is running around saying he's worth $50 million on television? Is this still the same movie star spin on a politician that we got all those 8 years still at work here? I don't know.
Before we take our first call, bring us up to date on Matt Drudge. You're living where?
Miami Beach, no state income tax. And when you start making money, it helps.
What are you doing besides the Drudge Report?
I'm doing radio on Sunday night, which we're having great fun. Heard locally here in WMAL in New York and WABC out in LA and KFI, various others, 200-plus stations. But that's it. You know, the website for me is a complete, almost complete release. I don't answer to anybody there, Brian Lee. I'm nobody.
We had callers suggesting that the media is afraid of George Bush. And that's why they're not. That's why they're not being very critical.
I think you'll see it swing around and around and around. Everything has a season. Just as beautiful as it is today, we had another tornado warning come through Washington, D.C. last night. Everything changes. This press is going to pile up on Bush. You saw it with Enron. You saw that they tried to get something going there. Unfortunately, it involves both parties, so that one wasn't a pure scandal. I suspect if Karl Rove continues to go up and there is nobody really to checks and balances in the White House, they'll start making some mistakes based on hubris and ego, and I think the press will pile on.
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, you're on the air.
Hi. Originally, I was going to ask about Mr. Drudge sort of mocking the notion of a right-wing conspiracy and ask what his opinion was in light of the books that have been written by David Brock and Gene Lyons and Joe Conason, that there is, in fact, a right-wing conspiracy that's been very active through the Clinton years. But I want to change my question now to this notion of...
Well, you got that one in.
Thanks. I want to ask him why there is such a clamor about Clinton possibly earning some money as an ex-president doing honest work, and why Mr. Drudge, as this crack investigative reporter, feels no compulsion whatsoever to investigate the Carlyle Group and the kind of money, more money that George Bush Sr. can use in a lifetime, trading on the death of young men and women in armies by selling weapons.
If you think commercial television is honest work, I've got news for you. The television business I have found just to be absolutely full of contradictions and phoniness. There's some good people in television, especially on the news side, but I don't know if it's honest work. As far as Gene Lyons and Joe Conason and David Brock, ma'am, I think that's the same book. I think they keep rewriting their own words, almost as if to reinforce their thought. There's about 10 people who hold this theory. They all kind of revolve around a guy named Sidney Blumenthal, and if you do connect the dots on this thing, it's their theory. I'm an independent guy. I don't answer to anyone. To put me in the right-wing conspiracy is an absolute dishonesty on their behalf, just as I would say they are a left-wing conspiracy. No, they're a little cabal of about 10 people.
Bethlehem, what do you say?
Do I have a chance to respond?
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't Sidney Blumenthal the man that you tried to slander, saying that he beat his wife, sort of to discredit him? Is that the guy that you're sort of pointing to as the center of this vast left-wing conspiracy?
Well, he sued me. He ended up paying me to get out of the lawsuit, so I'll let you figure that out.
I think I do have aren't you pretty much funded by people with unlimited resources, and wasn't Sidney Blumenthal fighting this on his own?
Am I funded by? No, I'm not funded by anybody. I have an ad banner at the top of my website. I'm also funded by Clear Channel for my Sunday night show. You would call it honest work.
Oh, honest work. Well, what about my Carlyle Group question? You feel no compulsion to investigate that connection?
I think I'd have about 3 readers if I obsessed on the Carlyle Group. You may or may not be one of them.
Is that a reflection on the readers or a reflection on the society, or what? I mean, the Carlyle Group made up of former, they're run by Mr. Carlucci, former Secretary of Defense, doing business a lot in the military-industrial complex?
I look to go where the action is, and I'm looking for new angles and fresh things. I mean, to keep going back over these things, I think there's been an abundance of coverage, especially on the internet, where anyone can write anything about anybody for the most part. And I'd say to the caller, start your own website. It could be quite a sensation. We'll call it CarlyleGroupWatch.com.
Does your website give you a pretty good living these days?
It does, yes, and it comes a long way from when I first appeared on this show, where I wasn't collecting any revenue from it, but it keeps growing, simply because my prediction at the National Press Club about 3 years ago that there was going to be this explosion of individuals on the internet, hundreds of millions of people reporting, kind of has not come true. You have these bloggers that they're trying to diminish us by calling us bloggers. There was a Kurtz column about 2 weeks ago saying, oh, the blogger. The first one was Matt Drudge. Now, he used to call me gossip monger, but now I've graduated, I guess, to blogger. It's kind of arrogant stuff coming from the Washington Post, which I assume got its foundations and its beginnings, probably quite humbly in the beginning. I go to the museum over in Virginia, and you see where the press started. It started with individuals, for them to look down, and the New York Times tried this last summer, calling us the me-zines, as if the New York Times isn't a me-zine of some sorts these days of Hal Raines.
By the way, that ad at the top of your website there, what is that today, do you know?
No, I can't see that far.
What does it cost somebody to buy that ad?
That's a good question. I think it's based on performance of how many people click through it. I get 15 cents a click or thereabouts. How much are the local papers here going for? 25, 35 cents, so I'm still a bargain.
I mean, if somebody clicks on your website, that's worth 15 cents to you?
For me, yes.
And
clicks on the banner ad, not on the website. So you actually have to click on the banner ad. The website is still free. I've never charged anything to come in there.
And who manages this for you?
There's an outside company that does. The ad revenue on the internet has, as everybody knows who's in this business, has fallen dramatically. I predict probably an upsurge again, but who knows? If AOL Time Warner, which was at $70 a share, now valued at $18, can do it, the rest of the media economy is likely to reflect that.
Titusville, Florida, on the other's line for Matt Drudge. You're on the air.
Matt, you are a great service to America. I start my day every morning on your website.
Thank you.
And about an hour later, I read the Orlando Sentinel, and I find that everything in there I read the day before on your website. So if it's only 15 cents to click on the banner, I'll do it every day. It's cheaper than the Orlando Sentinel.
Well, thank you.
Of course, it doesn't cost this man anything, does it?
No, again, it's free. It's only when you click on the ad does anything happen.
So the way you can pay him back is to read the ad and then go...
yes, I guess so. Now, recently, a Chicago Sun-Times editor wrote a column herself, or one of them, about how she prepares the newspaper, and she did concede one of the things she does is read the Drudge Report looking for stories. Slowly but surely, the main press is starting to realize that other people can edit the news and have other people have talent outside of their very own newsrooms beyond the Associated Press, which this is new, because usually editors would just take the AP or the Reuters and mix stuff around. Now they're actually going to outside sources, whether it be the British press, which I have been fascinated with since I've been online, and now various wire copy coming from the AFP over in Europe, especially this weekend, headed into this big election there. we'll be getting information that are from non-American sources.
How many years have you been doing the Drudge Report?
Coming up on 8.
Do you have anybody else helping you yet?
I do. I have a guy named Andrew Breitbart who's out in California, and he's helping me. He's probably in bed right now. But that's it. Outside of all the readers, you have to understand, I get tens of thousands of emails a day. All of those people are giving me tips and information. Sorting through all this has always been the maze, but it's an embarrassment of riches.
Clearwater, Florida, on the Republican line for Matt Drudge. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning. This is very hard for me to try to put this question out there. In 1948, when England and they gave this part of land to the Jews, and you got Palestine, you got Saudi Arabia. Those are Arabic people, but from the Muslim religion. Palestine, they're Muslims, and are the Jews trying to have their own race other than a religion because they want their own country? They want their cake and they want to eat it too.
Mr. Drudge.
I don't, speaking as a Jew, I don't even know what that question was. It kind of just went right over my head. Maybe it's the IFB.
April 29th, 2002, 11/11/08 Eastern Time. You say exclusive. Angry Aaron declares in memo, I am the face of CNN.
Yes, he has since denied this.
But they also say, I guess you report in your own story here that CNN says it never happened. They didn't write this.
It's when you have really good sources, and from time to time I have really good sources, and if only a few people know something. This memo wasn't distributed wide. This was an email, specific email to the general manager of CNN after the night of Robert Blake's arrest. Atlanta forced New York to carry the arrest, much to the heat of Aaron Brown and his producer, Borman. I had access to the internal workings there. A meeting was called at CNN. How do you deal with somebody in New York who's trying to override Atlanta? They'll deny all this. I've got to stand by it. I will approach Aaron Brown tomorrow night at the White House Correspondents' Dinner with specific details of this email to see if he still stands by that he never wrote it.
What about the other side of it? That let's say he did say that and he did write it, but he was interested in reporting on the Israeli situation versus the Robert Blake situation. Do you give him any credit for being more interested?
No, because he doesn't own the airwaves. None of us do. The air we breathe is free, Brian Lamb, not the airwaves. And we all have bosses, except for those of us on the internet, and we all have to listen to what they do. I don't know who calls the shots there at CNN these days. I don't know if it's Walter Isaacson or a guy named Garth or a guy named Jamie or a guy named Parsons. I can't figure it out. They've got so many hands in the pie. I did want to share this with you. This is the new Forbes.
Michael Powell, son of, on the cover. Why do you want to share this with us?
The headline is something.
$1 trillion man. Head of the Federal Communications Commission.
$1 trillion isn't a zillion, and a zillion isn't what it used to be. I remember the $6 million man. It wasn't that long ago. He recently gave a speech at Harvard where he said consolidation hasn't inhibited variety or fairness. This summer or the next couple months, we're about to get mergers like we've never seen, I believe. We're going to probably have AT&T join with GE or with AOL Time Warner or Disney or News Corp. We're going to have a massive jump, a merger that had been unbelievable, unimaginable, now probably will happen thanks to some courts here in Washington and Michael Powell who thinks let the free marketplace do with what it wants. But I'll tell you, this is a very serious issue when you have 2 or 3 and maybe now 2 and maybe one day 1 company in charge of all news flow and all information. They're trying to make it sexy with the $1 trillion man. I think it's horrifying, and I'll tell you this, if you just got a second further. He gave a speech where he made reference to me as what does the small guy do in a world where AT&T and GE and News Corp are one. And he said, yeah, the Matt Drudges of the world maybe will have a little place
but you're not going to see a proliferation of that product. At some point, the traditional producers move in who make it their business to make products the consumers value. I don't think that's so bad.
Well, he wouldn't, since he's the trillion-dollar man. I would say, again, I would argue, and anyone who goes to the museum across the river here understands deeply, the press is founded by individuals, not by huge corporations merging to cover up their losses from lack of performance.
Alta Vista, Virginia, on the Democratic line. You're on with Matt Drudge. Go ahead, please.
Does this man have an off and on button? Can't slow him down. My gosh. You didn't have very much to say of Clinton. You haven't put him down quite enough yet, so you got to catch up.
Do you like Matt Drudge, ma'am? She left us.
Yeah, she left, yeah. Well, it's a new century. He's no longer president. Still making some news. His associates still trying to get him into the papers, but we got a new president, ma'am, and I'm trying to focus on some of the new stuff.
Well, why are you going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Well, why not? I went to the Oscars 3 weeks ago, and it is the equivalent. It's the media political axis equivalent of the Oscars. No ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, have Ozzy Osbourne at the Fox News Channel. Who's going to want to miss that?
But I thought that those are the kind of things you didn't like about this city.
It's not whether I'm fascinated by it. It is real. It is the real Washington that I've come to know inside and out, unfortunately. It is based on show business. It is based on Q ratings and buzz points.
Woodland Hills, California, near Los Angeles. You're on the air.
Hi, thank you, gentlemen, for taking my call. Boy, I have so many things I want to say, but I'll try to be brief and focus on what I think are some inconsistencies and contradictions in our foreign policy, as well as our contradictions in covering the story overseas in the Middle East by our media. And I believe, and I'd like your opinion on this, that it's based on what we call legal bribery or lobbying. And I tend to question how we can function, even here in the U.S., much less abroad, as a fair broker when we're allowed to bribe our officials and elect them via what's called lobbying, but it's basically bribery. I can't go to a judge for a parking ticket and give him $50 to lobby my side. I go to jail if I try, and he goes to jail if he accepts it. But our congressmen, senators, and presidential candidates can accept hundreds of millions of dollars from these corporations, sometimes foreign governments or foreign entities or political systems that wish to push forward foreign interests. They basically just buy off our officials. And I find it hard to understand how we're supposed to function.
Thanks.
Well, hopefully they don't buy off the votes, too. I mean, come Election Day here in November, you will have a vote, sir, and hopefully no one's buying off your vote. I think we lose sight of that we elect these people. This still is self-government, and you can vote them out.
England votes, but not necessarily at the polls. Cell phones, internet, and touchscreen kiosks used by many in local elections. This by Tom Reed in today's Washington Post. In an effort to increase participation by young people, Sheffield and several other cities allowed citizens to vote by sending a text message from a cell phone. In a country that has gone mad for this new medium, Britain's 59 million people send 43 million messages every day, according to the cellular industry. That innovation proved attractive. I voted for council from the front seat of my lorry, said John Waller, a truck driver. It would have taken me an hour to get to the polling station and wait in the queue, but with any mobile phone, it took 20 seconds. I got a message right back that said, thanks for your vote. The UK is ahead of other countries right now, but all over the world, they're moving toward the internet, the telephone, interactive kiosks to make it easier for people to vote. What's your opinion of this possibility?
Well, yeah, we liked our Chads, and you thought corruption in Palm Beach was bad. Can you imagine voting on email? Have you ever been to one of these online polls? There was one poll running on a Little Rock, Arkansas television station. It's quoted in the Washington Times front pager on the TV show, Clinton TV show, where you could vote every single time. You can just keep voting and voting and voting as fast as you can click. Can you imagine that a whole nation and the trillions of dollars that flows into this town and all the decisions are made with email, and somebody sending a vote via email or HTML? The fraud would be overwhelming, and I think the UK is going to realize so much fraud online as far as personality, as far as whose identity is what. I could send an email saying I'm Brian Lamb, and the average email reader would believe that I mailed it.
Kansas City, you're on the air.
Good morning. Thanks for letting me share your morning discussion. I'd like to ask Matt a question. I'd like to know if he could shed some light on why President Bush has treated the Honorable Secretary Powell like a poor relative when he's on these peace missions, and seems to kind of self-destruct the efforts that Secretary puts forward. Have you noticed that at all?
I don't know if I've noticed that. Every Camp David photo I see has a picture of Colin Powell and his wife right there, right at the table, with about 2 or 3 other people. I think they're quite close. Now, maybe publicly it's a stance, because Powell is coming out much more of the even-handed, maybe a little bit quasi-Palestinian on some issues, and Bush wants to distance himself from some of that, so he's getting both sides of it.
Here's a Harris poll from April the 15th. This is in National Journal. How would you rate the job each of the following people is doing? Now, this is about 2 weeks ago. Colin Powell, excellent, 79%. President Bush, 74%. Donald Rumsfeld, 70%. John Ashcroft, 61%. Dick Cheney, 55%. Republicans in Congress, 48%. Democrats in Congress, 46%. Tom Daschle, 39%. And Dennis Hastert, 32%. Colin Powell way ahead of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with that?
I saw Chuck Todd at on your hotline segue says they were polling on the Pope. I don't know, this polling, this hourly polling, pretty soon with the technology, going back to England for a second, we're going to have instant polls all the time on everybody. There will be a poll channel showing the approval rating based on people hooked to electrodes and what they believe on every issue at any given hour.
Portland, Oregon, Democratic line for Matt Drudge. Good morning.
Yeah, God, I admire this guy. You can't believe how much I admire this guy. He's getting wealthy. Quote, Matt Drudge, about 10 minutes ago, every now and then I get a really good source. Meaning most of the time you don't get a good source. You make it up, buddy, and you're getting rich. God bless you. America's a wonderful country. And
Caller, do you read him?
Huh?
Do you read him?
Oh, hell no.
Yes, but he knows.
I'm changing the channel now, looking for a good movie.
There he goes. Probably the Penthouse channel, right?
No, not at all. It'll probably be something, vintage film.
Oh, okay.
Caller, why did you call him if you don't like him?
I just had to tell you that C-SPAN has sunk to a new low.
Yes, the lowest of the low.
Tampa, Florida, you're next.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. This is Dean Chambers calling from Tampa, Florida. My question for you, Mr. Drudge, is with the current situation involving Saudi Arabia, we saw the prince come over here last week and basically threaten President Bush about Israel and say that if we didn't pull out, there would be grave circumstances. We've seen telefunds raising money for suicide bombers. We've seen the 15 of the 19 hijackers being from Saudi Arabia. Why is it, sir, do you think that we tend to avoid Saudi Arabia in the subject, that there possibly is more involvement with these people? And then we only get 8.5% of our oil, but yet we tend to let 100% of our policy be dictated by these people.
Well, and supposedly our airspace in Texas, and who monitors that airspace? If we believe the Dallas Morning News that the sheik, the prince, had them take all the women out of the tower. It's baffling to me. I thought we're going at people who help terrorists wherever they may be, I think is the exact quote, and it seems to me we've been picky and choosy on that.
You're going to be on Crossfire this morning, so I'd like to get your response to this. This is in today's Lloyd Grove column in the Washington Post. CNN's Crossfire alum Geraldine Ferraro isn't watching the new souped-up version with the live audience. She claims she has seen only part of one show since last month's debut. There was so much yelling I just couldn't watch it, Ferraro's told us yesterday. It reminded me of some of the days when I was in Washington in Congress in 1982, and I refused to go on it.
Until they signed her to do the show. Well, it's no doubt some growing pains. I've been with the show since Tom Braden and Pat Buchanan, the early days. I'm not sure I like the color, the Walter Isaacson Time magazine look on that show that they're doing now. I kind of miss Novak in the close-up, or Bill Press in the close-up, James Carville in the close-up. Well, we won't go there.
Newport, Rhode Island, you're next.
Yes, good morning. I have this for Mr. Matt. Mr. Matt, you made a comment about Mr. Arafat if his face is a face of peace. What make you seem that Sharon is a man of peace? And another comment I want to make that you said that you are a Jew. I thought you are an American. Why it seems like you always have to push your agenda that you're Jews? Are you an American, sir? And I want to close up with this comment. The media doesn't afraid President Bush. It's the other way around. President Bush afraid those lunatics that they run the Congress and the Senate. And if he's not for the vote, he's going to lose the elections just like his father did. You given everything that you given on TV is the false. You bashing the Palestinians all the time. I love the Jews and they love the Palestinians, and I love the Palestinians. I love the Jew. And with your extreme views, the way you are going, why don't you go to Europe and say you are a Jew in Europe?
Thanks.
I'm going to need a bodyguard to get out of here, Brian.
You have no comment?
I don't know where to begin with that. I just simply made the comment, does this look like peace is right around the corner? Not that Arafat isn't a man of peace, or he is a man of peace, or somewhere in the middle. Just that face. Does this look like peace is right around the corner? That's my...
Bill Jan, Chester, Connecticut Democrat. Matt, it would be a good idea for you and Clinton and some other loyal Americans start some shows interviewing the other people of the world, find out why they hate us, and have you guys sell a little Americana.
Yes, good question. Why do they hate us? Bill Gertz has a story today in his Inside the Ring about a skirmish between Iran and a Navy ship. Iran hates us. Iran meeting with Jiang Zemin, president of China, 2 weeks ago. China really hates us if you follow the clips. Russia, who knows? Putin, he's a blue-eyed black belt, former KGB. He probably secretly hates us. All these people hate us because we're freedom. We stand for freedom. In many respects, they don't. And they stand for big centralized government control over people.
Betty Parker of Trenton, New Jersey. Get real, Matt. One has to read your site to see how very full of hot air and self-aggrandizement you are. I visit Drudge at least 10 times a day in a 24-hour span.
There she goes, yes. Well, I'm not the only one. The cover of The Economist coming out has fallen idols. This one, they have the former GE head on the cover. But also, you could look at all these people. A year ago this week, I asked Jerry Levin, who was former AOL Time Warner head, the most powerful man in the media, no doubt, in the biggest media company ever created. Are you the new William Randolph Hearst, sir? You control all these magazines, you control all these channels, you control all these movie houses. He gave me the look.
Who did now?
Jerry Levin. You know that special look? Zoom up this year, Jerry Levin is nowhere to be found. AOL Time Warner has just announced a $54 billion loss. Sumner Redstone over at Viacom has just announced a $1.1 billion loss. These people running these huge media conglomerates, these are fallen idols, no doubt, and hopefully I'm not going to go the way of the fallen idol to you.
Have you changed your lifestyle since you've begun to make a little money?
I bought a Corvette.
New one?
Yes.
What year?
2000, 2001. It's
what color is it?
White. Paid for by the internet.
What kind of a place do you used to live in? A one-room apartment?
Yeah, now I'm in a penthouse in Miami Beach, or near a penthouse, way up above the ocean. Yeah, it's changed from that standpoint, but as far as me still giving it my all, I sit there every day for about 15 hours a day practically, going through the same formula of collecting news from all over the world.
Do you ever feel you might have overextended yourself? I mean, you got your chin out there too far, that the money, if those 15 centers don't come at you, you're in trouble?
No. No, I don't feel overextended financially. Overextended on what have I taken on? Who do I put my energy against? We went through all that impeachment stuff, and I was doing that out of a rundown apartment in Hollywood with the full attention of the executive branch of government. And it seems to me, once you go through something like that, this is kind of small.
Madison, Wisconsin, Democrat. Matt Drudge on the line with you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, glad I'm got on. I am a Democrat and proud of it. I absolutely love President Clinton. I think he would be absolutely fantastic. I just watched a little bit on NBC saying how wonderfully charming he is and great for the camera. So he'd do a great job. I did listen to Gori Vidal as talking about the approval ratings for Bush, and he doesn't believe, and neither do I, that they ask the right questions in order to get the truth about whether or not they approve of him. And I don't think a New Hampshire poll is actually, certainly in Wisconsin, that's not how we feel. And as far as God in our special country, I remember watching the special about Scott and Amundsen, where Alistair Cook commented something that I absolutely believe, that God is quite impartial about all his creation. I don't think that he made practice people up until the time of America.
Thanks. We started off the last half hour asking the question whether God had a special relationship with this country, and 48% of the people suggest that I'll get the exact language here wherever I got it. That special protection from God, 48%. What's your answer?
Special protection?
Yeah. U.S. people in the U.S. get a special protection from God.
We had an F5 tornado here in Washington, D.C. last Sunday night, and one of the worst tornadoes Maryland has ever seen, the region has ever seen. It came within 2 miles of a nuke power plant. Someone's protecting us. No doubt about it. Can you imagine an F5 tornado going right into a nuke plant? The whole notion is that there's a God in Washington, D.C., and our history and our nation, I think, is so basic and simple. I'm surprised it even has to be asked.
This story in today's Wall Street Journal, O'Reilly to vie with Limbaugh on the radio. They're going head-to-head.
I broke that story, too, with some of my good sources.
Mr. O'Reilly starts on May the 8th. It's one company against another.
It should be noted, O'Reilly told me and about 5 million listeners on my radio show he was not planning to do this. This was in November. I knew he was. The problem is Mr. Limbaugh had gone deaf. And the looks and the appearances of it was he was taking advantage of Limbaugh's deafness. They delayed it, in my opinion, and now they're ready to launch with Limbaugh using an ear implant. A lot of this story, however, is confusing. And I should state I work for Clear Channel, who was Limbaugh's also syndicator. And Limbaugh I've grown to know personally and adore this man. He is, you talk about an iconoclast, you talk about a hero, you talk about one man making a difference in a system that's forever becoming more and more groupthink. That's the man. So I'm kind of, when it comes to Limbaugh, I'll be protective. However, I have learned some of these stations taking Bill O'Reilly are being paid to take Bill O'Reilly. WMAL here in Washington was offered $200,000, maybe even $300,000 to take Bill O'Reilly's show. The notion that they're coming forward and it's a great rush of love for Bill O'Reilly isn't correct. Stations are being given money to take this show. Now, if it was reversed and flipped, I'd report it the other way around. But this whole notion that there's a rush to take him based on popularity, yes, I have a chip on my shoulder since he lied to me on my radio show saying he really wasn't that interested in doing the radio. So
that's how Fox got on the cable television, was paying the
$10 a subscriber. Yeah, you do what you have to do. But the way this Wall Street Journal story has been written is that everyone's rushing to carry O'Reilly. Yeah, if they offered you a couple $100,000, maybe you would carry him too.
The nation's unemployment rate has gone up to 6%, the highest in 8 years. We go to Austin, Texas. Next call for Matt Drudge. Nina Easton coming up at the top of the hour.
Good morning. Brian, it's so good to see you. You're so handsome. I wish you were there every Friday. And when you're not there on Fridays, you really ruin my day.
Sorry.
Because I look forward. That's okay, no. Matt, you are just really inspirational. We have this wonderful Access TV here in Austin with Alex Jones, who gives you some different information. You gave me the inspiration to go and look further into stories that I was hearing before. And I just want to tell you, I think you're wonderful. I think you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work, all right?
Caller Alex Jones is a fellow that we don't hear him here in Washington that I know of, but he was talked about on a book notes recently with a fellow named John Ranson, who talked about Alex Jones taking his camera and trying to break into the Bohemian Grove Club out in above San Francisco. Does he ever talk about that on his show?
Yeah, he did. He showed the whole thing.
Why do you like him?
Well, you know, I take him with a grain of salt too. You know, just like, you know, what I said with Matt. You know, when he started bringing up his stories, I was going, "Wow, that is just like unbelievable." So, you know, you go and you research, or at least I do.
Thanks.
That's all you can do. That's what I do. Again, it's one man's opinion. With now the technological know-how and ability to communicate to millions and millions of people in any given day with very low overhead. You know, you recently interviewed Len Downey and his reporter Kaiser, now his editor Kaiser, on their book, The Perils of Journalism. Len Downey, being the editor of the Washington Post, he conceded in his book that Drudge Report brought more traffic to WashingtonPost.com than any other site on the internet, meaning more than Yahoo, meaning more than MSNBC, unless they're counting that as WashingtonPost.com. They're all related these days. That's quite an admission from somebody who's declaring the perils of journalism, because I think they're losing a little bit of control. This doesn't mean we don't read the Washington Post every day or the Washington Times, but it also means it's not all we're reading. This is the revolution, is that we're reading so many different things, so many different points of view, even coming from overseas now, on us and how we do things here. This is what has the power structure very antsy, and they're calling it the peril.
Do you speak for a living?
No.
On purpose?
Yes, because it takes me away from following the news flow, and I don't want to let Len Downey down.
Could we also say that you make so much money off of your website that you don't have to speak?
Yes, I also agree with the Pope that if you make too much money, it's a sin. So,
San Diego, for Matt Drudge.
Good morning. I'm sure that you've made a few cents off me, too, because I'm there every day.
Well, thanks.
And the question I have for you, and you were discussing it earlier today, is the media. And and you hear it with the callers also, these conspiracy theories. I truly believe that we're in a time that we want to be entertained, and we expect the news to entertain us. And I think even with Crossfire, I can't even watch it anymore because they're always yelling. And just like that one article was saying, I have a hard time watching it. And I think that all these conspiracy theories, we're so susceptible to it because we want to be entertained by the media. And all these mergers, as they come around and eliminate the little people, we're going to be very susceptible to propaganda. And I just wondered what your comment was on this.
Oh, yes. Christian Amanpour was the other night doing a big special on Le Pen in France. This thing was so lopsided, it was raw, steamy propaganda that if, the other side were doing it, they would call, Hitlerism propaganda. It just, point of view, thrusted based on video images and dramatic music. No doubt, when one or two companies control it all, and again, I send a warning out to this town on this beautiful spring morning, we are about to get more mergers yet. AOL Time Warner and the big failure that it wasn't a lesson. They're about to merge and merge and merge again, with the FCC head Michael Powell saying, let's get the party started. This is a danger to anybody operating inside the information business that doesn't necessarily want to be a part of one or two of those companies.
Here is Howard Rosenberg writing in the Los Angeles Times, which is owned by the Chicago Tribune.
Yes.
The buzz is building, and I'm so excited. Entertainment Tonight, Extra, and Access Hollywood have called. Oprah has called. Larry King has called. Bill O'Reilly has called. Rush Limbaugh has called. Ariel Sharon and Yasser Arafat have called. I'm trying not to get emotional, but knowing they care means a lot. You see, this day is very significant to me. It's the anniversary of my April 29th column.
Yes.
What's he talking
Well, he's picking up on the cult of personalities that we're talking about, whether it be the O'Reilly radio or the Giuliani book or the Bubba TV or the Drudge appearance on Crossfire.
And Hannity and Combs.
And Hannity and Combs. We're entering a period of back to it. I mean, it used to be a star system out in Hollywood where the stars were controlling a lot of the shots. Well, that's kind of replaying itself again. I'm not against this, by the way. I think Letterman and what he did to my friend David Weston at ABC News and what he did to Les Moonves at CBS, put them against each other, sort of mock. When talent finally gets some power, they're able to manipulate their boss, but these people are few and far between.
What are the chances that after all that happened, everybody's ratings went up?
Well, they probably would for a little while until they fade back again and they got to figure out a new stunt. By the way, Letterman's ratings didn't go up, so I don't know what Les Moonves got for his increase.
You mentioned earlier Sidney Blumenthal.
Yes.
Who we have not heard from in years.
We never heard from him when he was in the White House as communications director.
Now, you settled a suit with him? He paid you money?
Yes, he paid my side money to get out of that suit. He was trying to collect $30 million from me. He didn't have a case.
How much did he pay you?
Couple $1,000, and it was on principle. And I could have held out for more. But I decided, hold on, I was wrong. But in America, you're allowed to be wrong. As Sidney Blumenthal was wrong when he told an Associated Press reporter that Monica Lewinsky was threatening the president. I believe he was that anonymous source from inside the White House.
Where's he been?
He's been writing a book for a fancy publishing house. He just gave a speech in Chicago. He will return. He'll be on book notes. You'll have a great time with him. The problem and the intrigue for me is there's so much grand jury testimony, the book can't really conflict with what was said under oath.
Is that grand jury testimony public? No.
Sure, yes, it was
grand
released.
Jury? It was?
Yes, Newt Gingrich released it on the internet.
DeLand, Florida, on the Democratic line for Matt Drudge. Good morning.
Good morning, Brian. I'd like to make a comment to your guest and also a quick answer to that question about God protecting our country. I believe Fox is an insult to anyone intelligent, and it should be called TV trivia. It's so obviously slanted and off the wall that whenever I'm not watching a serious news show like CNN or C-SPAN and I want a good laugh, I'll flip Fox on for a few minutes. Is our country protected by God? I believe people are protected by God, except when religious leaders and politicians use religion for their agenda to control the masses as they've done through the ages. Thank you.
This story in today's Washington Times, distant rates are increased by MCI. WorldCom MCI Communications has raised its long-distance phone rates. The rate increase just days after its chief executive resigned affects 10% of MCI customers. Subscribers to the carrier's two most popular calling plans are not affected, an MCI spokeswoman said. The country's #2 carrier is doubling its Sunday per minute rate from 10 cents to 20 cents, raising directory assistant requests from $2.49 per call, and boosting per minute rates and monthly minimum charges on several plans.
Yes, well, again, a few people control it all, and they pretty much can do with what they want.
Do you happen to use MCI?
I don't. I only have a cell phone for emergencies. I never have it on. I live a very weird life, Brian. I'm truly digital only. I never really even pick up the phone. It's a fun life because it's you get to pace it out. I don't like the sound of the phone ringing to begin with, but as far as a few companies raising the rates, it scares me, again, when you have 1 or 2 or 3 people controlling the shots. My only hope is they will all be colossal failures like AOL Time Warner, and they'll have to break up and sell.
So if we saw you in Miami Beach, living in your penthouse, in your white convertible Corvette.
Yes.
What would we see? I mean, would you be down the boulevards? I mean,
down Collins Avenue.
Hat on and
somewhere in the water.
Somebody yells, "Hey, Matt!" I mean, is it? Are you public?
No, it's
figure?
not nearly that romantic down there. It's a spectacular place. I have fallen hard for it. It's the weather, the climate. I grew up in Washington, D.C., as you know, just right up the street. It is such a tricky town with so many boundaries and so many fault lines. Are you with us or are you against us? So many things. I don't get that down there, and I'm able to concentrate so much on the world flow, on all the wire services and all the satellite images, everything bouncing through. I find myself a lot more objective as far as what I'm looking for on a passing world scene as opposed to living within these cities and having to brush up against people and their quirky personalities.
You didn't get enough today of Matt Drudge, and we have about 10 minutes left. Crossfire tonight, Hannity and Combs, and if you've got a ticket to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, Matt Drudge will be the guest of the Washington Times. Will you be wearing your hat and your tux?
I don't know. If Wes Pruden will wear his hat, I don't know. The Washington Times, I should note, has really become quite a, if not the first read under Bush. USA Today may be the first read, since that seems to be their paper of choice for stories. But thank goodness for a two-paper town, unlike Los Angeles. I know there's Los Angeles Daily News. There seems to be, again, a lack of real competitive, yes, there it is, Bush's favorite newspaper.
Annandale, Virginia, for Matt Drudge. You're on the air.
Morning, Matt. Good morning, Brian. Brian, first note, AKAs have been replaced by LKAs. I served one, so go Gator Navy. Number two, Matt, good luck for you. If your empire crashes, you can always have free community college coffee someday. And three, with everything, all the news that you get, what technique do you use to discern between what's credible information, what isn't? And as an example, the Janine case this last week.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you supposed to believe? You get it from everywhere, from 500 to 1,000 to, eventually it settles out at 55.
Well, you don't know everything at first. This is, in the wire world, it's called a write-through, when you could amend and fix and change. And sometimes you don't know things for quite some time. I don't believe the first version of anything. I really don't.
Well, today there's a story that the Human Rights Watch people have been over there. 3 of their people went in and looked at Janine and came out and said there wasn't a massacre. Now, would you instinctively believe Human Rights Watch if it was on some other story?
I'm guilty, because I ran the huge headline massacre early on, and I probably didn't I haven't yet run a big headline, no massacre. So it is tricky when you follow the heat and you're going for the energy, as everybody does in this business, whether they admit it or not, whether it's the people up in the high lofty clouds like Hal Raines, all the way down to the bloggers. You are going for action. So when you get a sensational headline, you tend to follow it, as they're doing today with Clinton offered $50 million for a TV show, and no one can figure out how $50 million got in the mix.
The lead on USA Today is by Barbara Slavin. Feuding trips up policy on Iraq. U.S. split over who should oust Saddam. President Bush's hopes of building a strong insurgent group to replace Iraqi President Saddam Hussein has been set back by feuding among U.S. officials over who should lead the opposition. Administration sources say a fight between moderates in the State Department and conservatives in the White House and the Pentagon has killed plans for a conference of Iraqi dissidents in Europe this summer and has prompted a cutoff of funds for a rival anti-Saddam group. From what you've heard so far, who leaked this story?
It doesn't matter who did, but the policy is go to USA Today. Overshoot the intellectuals, overshoot the New York Times and the Hal Raines and the Washington Post.
It's also, though, written in James Hoagland's column in today's Washington Post.
Well, okay, so they sprinkle it around from time to time, but it was very interesting when I noted the questions Bush took at a recent press conference, and the New York Times was 4th or 5th or down the line. They're going for populism. They're overshooting. The New York Times has very few sources inside the Bush administration. It's killing them. At tomorrow night's dinner, they may not even have a Bush official at their table. They will claim, well, because they're not going for celebrities. I remember last year looking over and seeing Mary Madeline and Karl Rove at the USA Today table, and I said, oh, that's where it's coming from.
Wanakay, New Jersey, on the Republican line. You're on the air.
Yes, Matt. It's a pleasure, and Brian, I want to thank you for preserving the freedom of speech in the United States today. You're doing a fine job. And I have one question for you, and that is, do you think that President Clinton right now is kind of laying low so that when he does come out on either his on his TV show or for speeches, he can really cash in on this?
Well, the book cycle, Hillary's book cycle too. Both of them now, the #1 record book deal going to Bill, I assume. #2 going to Hillary, all through an attorney, Barnett, here in Washington, D.C. Major money, and they've got to find a way to recoup some of that. By the way, the Hillary book deals with Viacom CBS, Simon & Schuster, I believe, or some dotted line there. And I'm wondering if when Clinton meets with Les Moonves at CBS Viacom, Simon & Schuster, if there won't be a deal. See, again, this goes back to those few people controlling all of it.
Nina Easton, who has written this article, The Power and the Glory, Who Needs the Christian Coalition When You've Got the White House, the Religious Rights Covert Crusade, in the publication American Prospect, which was started by Bob Kuttner, and also Robert Rice, who's running for governor up in Massachusetts. She'll be here in just a moment. We go to Jacksonville, Florida for Matt Drudge.
Good morning, Matt. It would seem it's one of the few times I'd probably agree with you in the fact of a few people controlling a lot. The reason I'm saying this is that the outcomes of a democracy or dictatorship might be the same if the dictatorship or the democracy has limited information to choose from.
Mm-hmm. Well, but the argument now is we have all this access to all this new information. But it's up to an active a voter bloc to actually research things and to spend time. For instance, this story just hit UPI over there.
Owned by the Washington Times.
Owned by the Washington Times, about Ridge. I would have made this the banner headline. Eyeing a new driver's license. This is the new national ID that they're claiming they're not getting ready to launch. Well, if there is a national coordination of driver's license, where heretofore has been done through various, individual states, we are headed for a national ID. Of course, they'll say for safety and terrorism, as a lot like they said Social Security number would never be used for ID, just for benefits. All of this is a centralized government, which is a disappointment for a president who ran on decentralizing Washington and not making Washington the center of the action. If a terrorist act or two really thwarted that entire premise of his, he should come out and explain it a little bit further.
This is UPI, and it's now owned by the Washington Times in some fashion or another, and there's a name here by the name of Nicholas Horrock. I wonder if it's the same Nicholas Horrock who used to work with the Chicago Tribune.
Well,
it could be his son, too.
Well, maybe they all move around, yeah.
But what about UPI? Do you use it very often?
I use it all the time, as I do Reuters and AFP and Kyoto and Shenhua and Itartas. The wires are where the action is.
Portland, Maine, excuse me. You're on with Matt Drudge.
Yeah, hi, Matt and Brian.
Hi.
This is such an honor. And I wanted to say that after 9/11, everything was frozen, but you came through. You still had your links to everywhere, and that's where I could get the news I needed. And also, I think that everything is about being first. And because of what you do, you have the ability to be first with events, and I think it's events. I think news is still going to be events driven, and they're just going to tie their own hands. Those big places, they won't be able to move. They won't have the adroitness that you have. So that's it.
Well, I remember I was speaking to Josh Gerstein, who works at ABC at the White House once, and he was explaining to me what ABCnews.com, it was just coming on the air, and they were very excited. He goes, we can update a headline in about 20 minutes. Change our headlines in 20 minutes, which was quite a revolution, they thought to them. It takes about 3 seconds for me to update a headline. Until these newsrooms really understand the immediacy of it, and where they're not going to get the sensibility where everything zooms at such hyper speeds. You would say that's one of the perils of journalism. Len Downey would argue that they really, their deadline rush every evening is much different than the internet deadline rush, or the broadcast news at 6:30 that Tom Brokaw has to have his teleprompter copy ready. Isn't a rush a rush? It's all kind of the same thing.
What kind of volume do you get on a daily basis?
It's up to over 4 million visits a day now, which is quite a now. How many?
Are those 4 million individuals?
No, I don't know. There really isn't a right way, unless you hire a Nielsen or an Arbitron or one of these other groups, which I refuse to do, because I don't want to rush and make the internet what TV and the Nielsen chase became over 50, 75 years to what the disaster that is now.
The big question, though, is how many people click onto that ad every day?
To me, that's moot. It just is.
Moot?
Yes, it is. At 35 years old, I can say I've made it. And whatever else happens here is gravy. It's the love of freedom and the love of information that keeps me going.
Phoenix, you're on.
Good morning, Brian and Mr. Drudge. Thank God, praise God for Matt Drudge and the fact that he keeps drudging on. I so wish I could get an email alert every time he changes something on his page. I'm constantly going to his page to see what's going on. The man has got an intuitive insight into American politics, and I thank him very much.
There you are.
Well, it sounds like a mixed group this morning.
Now,
50-50 vote.
I want to know, though, I mean, we've got one more call we're going to take. I want to know, you know, you're going to appear on Crossfire, you're going to appear on Hannity and Colmes. You promised that you would say it all here first. That was part of the deal.
Well, you cut me off at some point, Brian. I guess I was going on too long. Yes, I say it all in 1 hour. But listen, 1 hour on C-SPAN is worth about 500 hours on commercial time by the time the clutter and the promos for what's coming up next are finished.
So you've said it all. You're not going to say anything new on either one of those other shows?
For this hour, I've said it all. For this hour.
For this. Middletown, New York. You're on the air. Your last call for Matt Drudge. Please go ahead. Middletown. Middletown. No. Where are you calling from?
Long Beach, California.
You're on the air.
They're up early.
Yeah, I am. It's early here on the West Coast. Yeah, I love Drudge. And I was just thinking about something the caller earlier had said about Fox. Fox is blowing away CNN and all the other cable news networks, and it's because of their credibility. It's because they have balance. I think you see such a violent reaction, such a hateful reaction against Fox because of the damage they've done in the news business.
Thanks, caller. Running out of time. Have they done
Perfectly
damage?
said. A nice finale. Yes, credibility is in the eye of the beholder. In this new 21st century modern media era where we have trillion-dollar men named Michael Powell, credibility is left to you and your viewer or your reader.
Last quick question on, you reported on Peter Jennings that ABC is going to try to pay him $2.5 million less. Do you think they'll get away with it?
Yes, the salary cut, reversing a U-turn on this. Dan Rather just re-upped. We're waiting on Brokaw. Somehow this is the race of the summer. Will he take a pay cut and the humility that may follow? I don't know. I would assume the house that Roone Arledge built, if the bottom line is that David Weston has to cut, they will cut.
Matt Drudge of Miami Beach, thank you for joining us. Nina Easton up next. Don't forget John Steinbeck tonight at 8 o'clock East Coast time on Network 1.